thank you very much, Ambassador Peck. Thank you, Hassan, and for the organizers of the Friends of Sabeel conference this year. It's always such a pleasure to be with people who are so concerned about this very important region of the world, who respect the people that live in that region, respect the cultures that come from that region. And talk about this afternoon is a recent trip that I made. I just got back less than a week ago from a trip to, what was supposed to be to Gaza. I was part of the international women's delegation that was going to Gaza. 100 women from 7 countries were going to Gaza in solidarity with the women of Gaza on International Women's Day. And we had done a similar trip in 2009, mere weeks after the horrific Israeli attack on Gaza in December of 2008 and then January 2009 that killed 1,450 people, injured 5,000, left 50,000 homeless. Well, less than 6 weeks later, we brought a delegation of 60 women and men into Gaza and met with 13 different communities of women throughout Gaza. So here it was 5 years later, and a French organization, Palestinian support organization, said we would like to take another group of women to Gaza because the conditions there are so difficult, so much more difficult now than they were in 2009, and we want to show our solidarity with the people of Gaza. You know, it's much more difficult to get into Gaza than it is into the West Bank. What's happening in Egypt is really affecting the people in Gaza. And that's what we saw so in our face on this last trip. That indeed our International Women's Delegation of 100 women, and actually only 82 of them actually got on planes to try to get to Cairo. But of 82, only 16 of us were allowed by the Egyptian government to even get into Cairo. Only 16 out of 82 were allowed. The rest of them were stopped in the Cairo airport. How about a Nobel Peace Laureate being turned away by the Egyptian government? Marie McGuire was turned away, put back on the airplane that she came in on. And then that afternoon, we had 8 more Americans that were turned back at the airport. And then that night, 40 French women that were turned back at the airport. Those 16 of us that made it into Egypt were witnessing, though, something that we all need to be well aware of. That in the past, where in 2009, the Mubarak government, the military government of Hosni Mubarak, overthrown in 2011. In 2009, that government let us go into Gaza. We had 7 different delegations that went into Gaza in 2009. We were allowed to cross the Sinai to go into Gaza. But now, 3 years later, 4 years later, the new military government, you know, now it's the 4th government since 2011. You have the Mubarak government that was overthrown, the Armed Forces Council, the interim government, then you have the Morsi government, and now you have another military government. And then in a couple of weeks, there's going to be an election, so that'll be the 5th government since 2011. Well, the military government this military government is taking a much different tack toward Palestinians, much different. That military now has destroyed the lifeline into Gaza. You know, since 2009, the lifeline really for food, for equipment, for everything was coming through the tunnels under the Rafah border from Egypt into Gaza. Hundreds of tunnels. In fact, now the Egyptian government is saying that there were 1,000 tunnels that they have now destroyed. The whole area under that border that the United States tried to chop off by funding some sort of a steel plate that went down in there, but apparently nothing would withstand the excellent tunneling abilities of the Palestinians in Gaza. And they continue to bring in everything that was needed for the people of Gaza that had been put on a diet by the Israeli government. But now the new Egyptian government has said, because of the instability, because of the attacks that have happened on Egyptian military and security personnel and police personnel in the Sinai and in Cairo, that indeed they're cracking down. They're cracking down and they don't care what happens to the people of Gaza. That's essentially what's happening. Egypt is now a full participant with the state of Israel in the isolation of Gaza. The isolation of Gaza. You know, the border with Gaza has only been open one day in the last 45 days. One day. The bottom line is that the Egyptian government does feel under great pressure because there have been about 180 military and police that have been killed in the Sinai by militant groups. Some of them Bedouins, some of them Islamic Jihad, some of them no doubt that have been trained and equipped by Hamas or other militant groups in Gaza. The Egyptian government, though, is washing everyone with the brush of, if anything we suspect comes out of Gaza, then all of you suffer. Richard Falk talked about collective punishment. And indeed, it's collective punishment on steroids now. Our Egyptian government is really sealing now the fourth border into Gaza. But they would say, think about the people, the refugees that have now come out of Syria, that they are in even dire straits than the people of Gaza. Now, did you ever think you'd hear that? That there are people that are in even dire straits in the pitiful refugee camps that have been set up in the Turkish borders and in Lebanon and Jordan. But all of these people of the Middle East that are now displaced, some for 60 years, others now for 2 years, really deserve our support, deserve our work and efforts. And as we continue in our work in solidarity, as we go on to the next movement of how we get international attention drawn to Gaza and the West Bank. And this international women's delegation got some bit of attention, although it was for reasons that we never suspected, that indeed it would be because the Egyptians would not allow us to travel. But it harkens to exactly what's going on for the Palestinians. They are not being allowed to travel. They're not being allowed out of Gaza. They're not being allowed to come back from Egypt into Gaza because the borders are open for such small periods of time. So it's a time for great solidarity, to continue our solidarity with them. And one of the projects that I've been working with some of the folks that are right here, is one called Gaza's Ark. You know, we've done a lot of boat projects. 2008 and 2009, Free Gaza had 5 boats that did get into Gaza. And then next was 2010, the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. I was on the Audacity of Hope, as was Kathy Sheets right here. Well, the next step in this is something called Gaza's Ark. So instead of butting our heads against the wall of sailing into Gaza, we have a boat. We have renovated a boat in Gaza, and it's a fishing boat, now a cargo boat, and we're going to sail it out of Gaza to break the blockade from the inside out. And we'll be asking you all to help us with cargo on that ship, cargo that you can purchase directly from vendors in Gaza over the internet. And if you go on our website, Gaza's Ark, GAZAARK.org, you'll see the wonderful vendors who will take your order and will wrap it in a package saying, consigned to Gaza's Ark, delivered to you and your address. And on a day in the summer, we'll have all of these things brought down to Gaza's Ark, and the Ark will sail out. So we ask you all to think of these types of projects. And I know many of you all are a part of projects in the West Bank and in Gaza. We need to really buck up what we're doing in both places to make sure that people in the West Bank and Gaza know that they are not forgotten. So with that, I want to thank you all for your continued interest and support. And let's have some good questions for Ambassador Pat. Thank you.